So within the health and safety sphere, Majid, I believe you spent a bit of time in the Holy Lands in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Talk us through that experience.
Well, where do I start? What an experience. So I was posted in the Haram of Mecca and Medina, mainly in Mecca, as the senior risk management consultant. So my job was to advise the principal contractors, the civil defense force, which was overlooking the safety of the sites, a special committee appointed by the king himself, who were also appointed specifically to overlook this project, and the project managers there. So the idea was to make sure that the construction phase plan, when it was carried out, the elements which related to safety and the pilgrims and the Hujjaj, it was done as safely as possible, and reduce the number of accidents, incidents, and whatever else on site for a number of years.
With such a population visiting throughout the year,
Yeah.
it can be
fact,
pretty
this is probably, it's probably the only construction site which is live around the world with millions of people visiting through the site every year as well. So it's like a live construction site with the Joe public walking through. It was quite something.
And how long were you there for?
So I started there in 2013 and I came back in 2016.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So health and safety, being from the insurance sector, I battle with this on a daily basis for clients.
Yeah.
But from a health and safety professional, from your perspective, what is health and safety in its core definition?
In its core definition, I mean, everybody will come up with their own way of describing what health and safety itself is. But for me, it's anything which affects the health, safety, and in legislative forms, health, safety, and well-being of the people you work with who would fall under your responsibility. Now, that could include employees, it could be contractors, it could be visitors. It could also be a category which is defined as others, in inverted commas, according to legislation. Now, when people say, well, who are others? The others are people who may not be your employees. They may not be falling under the category of being your contractors. They may not be actually your visitors, but the people who are affected by what you do and what you may not do, and which could impact them. So it could be you're in the studio right now, and the people who own the studio will have certain obligations and responsibilities. Anybody who's walking past the studio, they're not an employee, they're not a contractor, they're not visiting you, but if they're affected by any of your shortfalls, then you can land yourself in some trouble.
Okay.
So
now, when you say you can land yourself in trouble, so the example you give about the studio, if there's a member of the public walking past on the street and they happen to trip over a hazard which is outside the front door of the studio, is that really the responsibility of the studio, or is it upon that individual to make sure that they look at where they're going?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to apply the reasonable test here from in legal terms, because as you know, my background is in law. We always apply, when it comes to these specific cases, the reasonable test. What would the man on the omnibus do? What would the average Joe blog do when they're walking down the street? Was it reasonably foreseeable that there'll be something in front of them which will trip them up? If not, was it reasonably foreseeable for the person who controls the building, not necessarily rents it, but controls the building, to see that the passerbys are going to be affected by what they have out there? So if they've got a trip hazard out there, was it reasonably foreseeable? And if it was, could they have reasonably done anything about it? If they could have, then they should have.